I checked out from news over the weekend, so when I started reviewing events from the G20 in Japan, I had a ton of catching up to do. We had Trump stepping into North Korea. We had world leaders visibly cringing as Ivanka Trump tried to talk to them about policy, which I'll get to. And then we also had Donald Trump being asked about busing and liberalism and being so clueless that he simply stated that buses are a primary way of getting people to school. This is one of those things that is funny in a superficial sense, but it's so, so tragic. And I guess I was laughing in order to not cry because it is the latest world embarrassment thanks to President Donald Trump. Trump was first asked about busing as racial integration policy. There's a big history of this in the United States. So when we talk about busing in politics, we're not talking literally about do you like buses versus vans, cars, or bikes for getting kids to school. We're talking about busing programs that date back to the 1970s. The whole point of it was to desegregate classrooms, to have more racially diverse schools. It's very controversial. There are many arguments to be had about it. The reason that it's back in the news is that in debate 1, night 2 last week on the Democratic side, when Kamala Harris called out Joe Biden during that debate, it was related to Joe Biden's policy on race-related issues, which includes that Joe Biden opposed federally required busing policy. And Donald Trump was asked about it, and the guy is just so clueless about this that you can see how confused he is. And eventually he simply sort of white flags and says, buses have been a primary way of getting children to school, clearly having no idea what Kristen Welker from NBC News is asking him about. And yeah, it's as embarrassing and cringeworthy as it sounds. Let's look at it together.
Thank you. I have a question about the border, but I just wanted to follow up quickly on the question about busing. Do you see it as a viable way of integrating schools? Does that relate to the policy that you're going to unveil?
Well, it has been something that they've done for a long period of time. I mean, you know, there aren't that many ways you're going to get people to schools. So this is something that's been done. In some cases, it's been done with a hammer instead of a velvet glove, and, you know, that's part of it. But this has been certainly a thing that's been used over the... I think if Vice President Biden had answered the question somewhat differently, it would have been a different result, because they really did hit him hard on that one. So, but it is certainly a primary method of getting people to schools.
And does it relate to the policy that you're going to unveil that you just floated?
It relates to everything we're doing. And you'll be hearing about it over the next couple of months.
This is like being asked about the nuclear triad and saying, well, listen, triad refers to 3, and that's a bigger number than 2, so that's really something we have to contend with. I mean, it's just idiocy. This is a non-answer, and this is what the President of the United States believes qualifies as a political answer to the question. Then, once again, during the same press conference, Donald Trump was asked about Vladimir Putin's recent comments that Western-style liberalism is obsolete. And Trump is so ignorant that he thought that liberalism meant those lefties on the California coast, like in San Francisco and Los Angeles. He thought that liberalism meant, I guess, progressivism, when what we're talking about here is small L liberalism, which includes the sort of broader political philosophy of the West. It includes individual rights and capitalism and freedom of speech and freedom of religion. It applies to most Western democracies, even though it looks different in Germany and in the UK and in the United States, for example. And those are all small L liberalism. Trump thinks they're asking about like Bernie Sanders, and he criticizes Los Angeles and San Francisco. I can't believe that he's this ignorant, but he is.
His comments to the Financial Times right before arriving here was that Western-style liberalism is obsolete. I know you probably haven't read the interview.
Well, again, he may feel that way. I mean, he sees what's going on, and I guess if you look at what's happening in Los Angeles, where it's so sad to look, and what's happening in San Francisco and a couple of other cities, which are run by an extraordinary group of liberal people. I don't know what they're thinking, but he does see things that are happening in the United States that would probably preclude him from saying how wonderful it is. At the same time, he congratulated me, as every other Every other leader of every country did for what we've done economically, because we probably have the strongest economy we've ever had, and that's a real positive. But I'm very embarrassed by what I see in some of our cities, where the politicians are either afraid to do something about it, or they think it's votes, or I don't know what, Peter, I don't know what they're thinking. But when you look at Los Angeles, when you look at San Francisco, when you look at some of the other cities, and not a lot, but you don't want it to spread. And at a certain point, I think the federal government maybe has to get involved. We can't let that continue to happen to our cities.
This is breathtaking. I mean, breathtaking ignorance. And Trump puts the cherry on top with his own closing on this by saying that he likes the dictators of the world better than he likes our Western allies. This has nothing to do with the question. It has nothing to do with what Vladimir Putin is talking about. Understand, Putin was talking about our system of government. Putin was not talking about American progressivism and hipsters in San Francisco. Understand the level of disconnect here. Donald Trump thinks that this press conference was about his general opinion of kids getting to school on school buses, and he believes Vladimir Putin criticized American progressivism like San Francisco politics. In reality, Trump was asked about busing policy for racial integration and the idea that small L liberalism as a political philosophy has become a sort of obsolete in 2019. Trump doesn't even know what he was asked about. With many other presidents, I mean, I'm actually struggling to even talk about this. With somebody like George W. Bush, okay, whose policies I completely disagreed with, you would actually be analyzing what Bush said mostly along the lines of whether you agree with it and whether we believe that he is reaching the correct or incorrect conclusions on the basis of the facts that are out there. Donald Trump doesn't know what he was asked about. Okay? Donald Trump answered questions that were not asked. It is a total joke of a presidency. And unfortunately, too many Trumpists are equally ignorant here. They also don't know what were the questions actually about. Small L liberalism and busing for racial integration. Some of them do know what it was about. Some of them also don't know. So they came away from this thinking, Trump's on it. Trump knows what he's talking about. We are the laughingstock of the world, and that's actually the theme of the next story as well. A lot of laughingstock over the weekend. Today's program is sponsored in part by ZipRecruiter. I've talked on the show about how challenging the hiring process is. It's hard to find qualified candidates. It takes a long time. You have to sort through a lot of often unqualified candidate resumes, but there is one place where you can go where hiring is simple, fast, and smart, and a place where growing businesses can connect to qualified candidates. And that's ZipRecruiter.com/Pakman. ZipRecruiter sends your job to over 100 of the web's leading job boards, but they don't stop there. Their powerful matching technology will scan thousands of resumes, find people with the right experience, and invite them to apply to your job. As the applications come in, ZipRecruiter analyzes each one, spotlights the top candidates so you never miss a great match. And the ZipRecruiter system is so effective that 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first 24 hours. And right now, our viewers and listeners can try ZipRecruiter for free at the exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/Pakman. ZipRecruiter.com/PAKMAN. One more time, that's ZipRecruiter.com/Pakman.